If you haven't done that, you haven't done your job as a marketer.
Today, I'm speaking with Shannon Duffy, CMO of Asana, an AI-powered web and mobile application designed to help teams organize, track, and manage their work.
Most people have heard of Asana. Not everyone is using Asana, and some of the people that even use Asana aren't using Asana to its full potential. Someone in the marketing team might be using it, someone in the legal team might be using it, someone in the product team might be using it, but they weren't using it together. Hey, let us show you the true power when you connect all of this work together. We're really focused on teaching our customers how to innovate the way that they are working, their workflows, their processes, the way they set up goals, right? That's our focus.
How you go about actually marketing this product today.
Help people understand it's so much more than just sort of tasks and projects. And so from a marketing perspective, it's a really great story. I think the opportunity we have, and this is the challenge as a marketer, is...
Shannon Duffy, thank you so much for joining us on Top CMO.
I am so thrilled to be here, Jackson. This is going to be fun.
It's spectacular to be here with you. Now, for those who don't know, Shannon, you are the CMO at Asana. And I would expect that probably most of our listeners have used Asana at some point, pretty well-known tool. But for those who've been living under a rock, what's your elevator pitch for Asana? What's Asana?
Asana is the #1 AI-powered work management platform, and we connect your work, all the work in your organization, to your top line goals and make it easier to get things done.
And I love that you're bringing in the AI relevance there. That's fantastic. Staying atop of breaking trends. That's excellent. Now, tell me a little bit about who you're selling to. For like when I think of Asana, I think like almost anybody who is a knowledge worker, right, is a potential Asana customer. But when you think of your customers, how do you segment them? Who are you selling to?
So I think you hit the nail on the head. We are useful, and we sell to all knowledge workers. Anyone from small companies all the way to large enterprises are using Asana to manage their work. And I would say it works great for small companies. It is even more mission critical when you work in these larger, multi-time zone, multi-country companies that are trying to get work done across a large subset of people, time zones, countries, et cetera.
Now, when I imagine what it must be like to market for Asana, I imagine, and this might just be me, making up a narrative in my head, but I imagine that you face the unique challenge that kind of all the low-hanging fruit has been picked. People are aware of Asana, broadly speaking. Anyone who's going to be an early adopter to Asana, you got like years ago. So tell me a little bit about how you think about reaching and accessing new audiences, and how you go about actually marketing this product today.
Yeah. So I'm going to answer that from two different lenses. I think one, you're right. Most people have heard of Asana. Not everyone is using Asana, and some of the people that even use Asana aren't using Asana to its full potential. And so I kind of look at it in two ways. So one, it's like, yes, people might know it. They might have seen an ad. They might have used it for even like, a personal project, like, planning a wedding, or I used it when my children were applying to different schools to keep things on track. I think the opportunity we have, and this is the challenge as a marketer, is going from talking about it on how it serves and works for individuals and individual teams to, as I said before, the large companies that are using it across departments wall to wall, right? Slightly different use cases, still connecting work to goals, but a very, very different use case. So part of my challenge goal, what I think about every day when I wake up as a marketer, is how do we tell that story and help people understand it's so much more than just sort of tasks and projects. This can manage multi-dimensional, very complex portfolios of work across large companies.
Now, the way I hear you talking about this makes me think a lot about, I imagine you're probably doing a lot of account-based marketing, right? Where you sort of are able to go to a big enterprise and say, hey, you may not know this, but you've actually got 30 different teams using Asana in this kind of disjointed universe. And how can we put together some kind of a unified offering with like instant provisioning? Is that something you're doing? Tell us a little bit about that structure.
Account-based marketing is key. And you know a lot about Asana, because that traditionally was how our business grew, right? Like people would use it. Someone in the marketing team might be using it, someone in the legal team might be using it, someone in the product team might be using it, but they weren't using it together. And so now there's a couple of things we do. One, like you said, go to them and be like, hey, let us show you the true power when you connect all of this work together. And then second, one of our one of our most important marketing sort of strategies or tactics that we've really built out over the past year and a half has been this concept of our work innovation score. So because all these companies are using Asana, we can see how they're collaborating and we can pull out insights to help tell them, hey, if you used Asana together across these departments more effectively, your collaboration, your productivity could increase so much. And so from a marketing perspective, it's a really great story. It's a great story for us to tell sort of at our events and then third party, but also for our sales team to pick up the phone. So instead of like, hey, we see you're using Asana. Do you want to buy more Asana? That's not the best sort of sales or marketing pitch. But what is compelling is, hey, we actually have data on how you're using Asana today. And did you realize if you connect more users, if you set up these workflows or these use cases that we see are proven across many different companies in your industry, that's where you'll unlock greater productivity. So that's sort of when you think of like a marketing campaign, that's been a huge focus for us over the last year.
So talk tactics to me, Shannon. When you have these, kind of big account-based marketing pushes, and maybe even more broadly through your marketing kind of stack, what channels have you emphasized as a CMO? What has worked? And then is there anything that you tried that maybe you thought was going to work that really didn't? Any initiatives that really fell flat on their face?
So I think all marketers have done things where we've fallen on our face. We don't like to talk about them, but let's normalize failures, right? Because that's how we learn. I would say a couple things. I think for us, tight alignment with the sales team has been key. So definitely, paid media, social events, both our own and third party. What I will say after the pandemic, like first party, like your own events are back. Like prior to me joining, Asana didn't have sort of an Asana event series. So we've created one. It has probably been our most successful in terms of how do we reach the, higher level executives at these top accounts that we've done to date. So that's one, if you're a marketer out there and you don't sort of have an event that is about you, that you can wrap in sort of a thought leadership wrapper, continue to do it. I would say from a failure perspective, like I'll speak sort of high level to begin with, but Asana is making a transition where we're like, okay, are we sort of, PLG led? Are we SLG led? We're kind of in the middle. But what we found is when we try to message to both, we fail. If we try to be everything to everyone, and it's kind of making the hard decisions to be like, this is who we want to go after. This is how we're positioning the company. When we have clarity of that vision and clarity of the message, the results are always much higher than when we try to like make everyone happy and sort of talk at a sort of a more, we're still saying something, we're still saying it was something important, but it's not really resonating with a certain group of people, which is essentially what we're trying to do.
I'm curious if you agree or disagree with what I'm about to say. I think that oftentimes the kind of decision to go after a particular audience isn't often necessarily a question of like right and wrong. If you have 5 options, it may not be that, option B that you pick is so much better than all the other options, but just the act of choosing allows you to focus and specialize in such a way that you're able to really resonate. That doesn't mean that any of the other options aren't potentially equally worthy or even better, but making the choice is really the difference maker.
100%. And I think you said it correctly. Like, and I always will tell my team, like, there's no wrong decisions. Like, we might do something and it might not work. That wasn't necessarily the wrong decision because, like you said, well, maybe we were focusing here, we need to focus there. But at least having clarity helps you determine what is working and what's not when it comes down to it.
Now, you talked about events earlier, and I've marketed for large organizations and I've marketed for small startups, and I'm curious what advice you have for someone who's maybe working at a smaller organization for whom it's like a big reach to host a big multi-day conference, for example. How do you think of like kind of the minimum viable product for event-based marketing and for owned events? What's like kind of the table stakes to get into that game?
So you have to start small, right? I mean, like, and I'll give you an example from Asana. So Asana had never done events that were about Asana. So we started small in New York last year. I was like, if we get 100 people in the room, I will be thrilled. Well, guess what? We got 200 people in the room. And this year, we're going to do 1,000, right? And so it was like walk before you run. What's even more important though, is sort of scoping the size, is you have to have something to say. Like most people aren't like, hey, I can't wait to sit in a room with Asana for 6 hours and hear people talk about Asana. You have to have something else. And that's for us, for this concept of work innovation, right? We have our work innovation summit. We have our work innovation score. We have our work innovation center. We're really focused on teaching our customers how to innovate the way that they are working, their workflows, their processes, the way they set up goals, right? That's our focus. And yes, it happens to be a great coincidence that Asana is able to help them with that. But we're talking up here, not down here. And that's what gets people, 100 people, 200 people, 1,000 people to spend a day in a room with you.
So you've got to be providing real value to people so that they're excited to show up over and over again. Now, the kind of, chicken and egg question I have there is, it sounds like you're doing a lot of framework development and a lot of kind of high level thinking about the future of work. I assume that needs to start sort of long before you're inviting people into the room. People have sort of got to be familiar with the fact that you've got something interesting to say before you send them an invitation and say, hey, come listen to me talk for 6 hours.
Exactly. And going back to this concept of work innovation, we have our work innovation lab, which develops customized research, right? So it's research on how knowledge workers are thinking about work, the challenges that they have, the things that they want to see, which again is really helpful if you're, if we're talking to senior executives at company, every single person is trying to get more out of their workflows, their workforce. They're trying to engage their workforce. They're trying to motivate their workforce. They're trying to make sure people aren't wasting time on busy work, right? And we have the data that we can share, which again helps talk about Asana, but also helps talk about the way they think they're structuring their teams, et cetera. The way they goal people around getting the most potential out of their work organization.
Got it. So tactically for our audience here, the research, the idea development, the content marketing precedes the event marketing, and you kind of got to build one before the other is useful.
You have to have something to say. And I will say, because a lot of people are like, well, we don't have, like, if you're a small company, like, well, I don't have a work innovation lab. You can do a lot of that with analysts, right? Like Gartner, Forrester, there's a lot of even smaller firms that can do some customized research for you, or can reskin research that they're already doing. And that, again, that's something that's information, that's thought leadership, that's stuff that is kind of product agnostic, but helps explain why a product like whatever you're selling is so important.
I also think one of the things that you're touching on here is the importance of having really done some deep thinking about your industry. And that requires a level of involvement at a very senior level in your organization with thinking about what the company wants to say. And I don't know about you, but as a marketer, occasionally I've worked with executive teams that are kind of like, you know what, communicating with the public, that's your shtick. You think about that marketing guy, and they're not thinking about kind of what their proactive vision for their industry is, or what messages that they want to convey, so long as kind of the sales numbers go up. And what I'm hearing from you is it's probably like pretty important to get folks at the highest level of the organization thinking about the future of the industry and discussing it in a way that some of those ideas and points of view can develop early on.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's important for your sales team, right? I say all the time when you're talking about like channels, your sales team is one of the most powerful marketing channels you have, right? What are they saying? Are they consistent? How do they show up with a curiosity for the challenges their customers, and how do they map what the product does back to those specific challenges, the specific customer, not just do a generic first call deck pitch that you gave them. And also for the product team, right? So your product team is like, there is a point of view that marketing has. There's the real conversations that sales is having regarding sort of that point of view and how it maps back to real customer pains. And then there's the product org that actually has to look in the future and build this. And right, that's sort of like the I don't know what shape what this is that I made, but that's sort of like the three legs of the stool around making this flywheel work. So every year you can put on a first party event and have conversations that are a follow-up from last year. And here's the product innovation that we built from the products from last year. Like that's how this momentum stays sustainable.
Now, you touched a bit on the importance of the sales team as the sort of invaluable marketing tool. And in a lot of organizations, I think there's actually a lot of tension between marketing and sales. There's sort of this like dysfunctional cycle of blame where, marketing says, sales never closes any of our leads, and sales says marketing gives us garbage leads, and everyone's sort of pointing at each other. And how do you turn that into a harmonious relationship where, marketing is really addressing the needs of the sales team and helping them to be effective. Another way of wording this is, what do you think marketers most often fail to understand about their sales teams that would help them to have a better relationship?
Yeah, I think that I love this question. I get asked this question a lot. I have experienced both. I have right now. I have a great relationship with our CRO. I've had great relations, and I've had sales leaders that ask me why was I even sitting in front of them? What value was I providing them? I'll say a couple of things. I do think the role of marketing is to help the company sell, whether it's indirectly, whether it's through a direct sales force. And so kind of having that philosophy, I think, helps. Like, a lot of people got into marketing because we're creative, and you can say, look at this beautiful thing that I did. Well, if the thing is not producing any outcomes, you really didn't do the thing, and you really don't get sort of a pat on the back or a cookie. So I think sort of having that philosophy to begin with. Now, that doesn't mean we're order takers, and that doesn't mean like a CMO should just go into the office of the CRO and just write things down and do those things. That's not what I'm saying at all. But it's understanding that, like, if you are doing something and your sales leader is looking you in the eye and saying, this isn't working, you have to be self-aware enough or have thick skin enough to be like, let's go back and do it again. Similarly, like I think sales has a really hard job. And people like, have memes about salespeople or sales things, like their job is really hard. And the other thing for us, like, I will not put a first call deck out or a pitch deck in market unless I myself has sat in front of the customer and delivered it. Because it's really easy to sit in a room and whiteboard it, and you move the images around the slide, and you said, do we say easy or do we say straightforward? And you you debate this down. And then when you're actually sitting in front of a customer and they look at you and they're like, I don't get it. Or what? Like, that gives you, one, a lot of empathy for what your sales team has, but also gives you the feedback that you need to take and make yourself a better marketer and really make sure you're speaking the language of your customer.
Shannon, I can't tell you how much I love to hear that. I've been a sales guy. I've been a marketer. And kind of hearing that you're actually sitting down and delivering the decks is incredible. I think that, oftentimes you're handed something by your marketing team and told them, go deliver this. You're like, this is embarrassing. Like, I would never in a million years actually want to, and as a marketer to actually get into that role, I think that's fantastic and probably a good piece of advice for, the marketers listening to this podcast is actually go out and use the sales assets you're developing and see how they flow.
Yeah. Or do a ride along. Like, if you don't feel like you want, or like, do a ride along, sit in a meeting, sit on a Zoom call and listen to the questions the customer asks, listens to the feedback they have. Like, it's super valuable.
That's excellent. Now, we mentioned this a bit earlier, but you came to Asana following a great career at Salesforce. You were there for over a decade, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, long time.
Tell us, we've talked to other kind of Salesforce alum on the podcast, Kyle Lacey. We can actually link to his podcast in the show description as well. It seems like Salesforce cranks out some great marketers. So tell us a bit about your experience there and how it has informed your career as you've moved on to Asana.
I love this question because I say with full confidence, like, Salesforce made me the marketer that I am today. What's interesting about my story is it's very, like, I was acquired by Salesforce. Like, I never sat out to be like, oh, I want to work for Salesforce. I worked for a company back in 2010. It was called Jigsaw that Salesforce bought. And at the time, we were sort of the largest people acquisition Salesforce had ever done. Of course, they've gone on to do Slack and Tableau and MuleSoft and these like huge companies. But at the time, like, they were kind of beginning-ish in their M&A strategy. And the company I worked for was one of the first ones. And when we were first acquired, I was like, no, not for me. This is not where I'm going to stay. I don't want to work at a big company. And then I realized, I'm like, wait, Salesforce does probably some of the best B2B marketing, SaaS marketing in the industry, in the world. Like, I really want to learn. And so that was kind of the beginner's mind that I took. And sort of that was the, start of my journey at Salesforce. Salesforce is an incredibly strong, like, sales and marketing is a very respected craft at Salesforce, which, I mean, and I'm to be honest with you, like, I've worked other places where marketing is not as respected. Now, that's slightly a double-edged sword because we're respected so much, but also when, like, numbers aren't good, that marketing is in there trying to help find a solution. But I would much rather prefer that than being that marketing is an afterthought. Oh, go on you with your colors and your logo and your events. So marketing is really well respected. And I think, Mark Benioff as the leader and the CEO of Salesforce is a amazing marketer himself. So he's a really great person to sort of learn. How do you connect to your customers? How do you tell a compelling narrative? How do you make sure you are really focused? And sort of my customer focusedness comes from my time where it was like, if you're going to put new message in market, did you test it with customers? Like, if you haven't done that, you haven't done your job as a marketer. So it's definitely known as a CMO factory. Brett Taylor, who worked at Salesforce for a long time, used to call Salesforce a finishing school for SaaS executives, which I thought was pretty funny. But you definitely work with very smart people and learn how to do marketing in a really, really compelling way.
Now, you've touched a few times on this idea, and I'm gonna paraphrase you. So correct me if I'm getting the meaning kind of twisted here. But marketing is often treated at certain companies as kind of like the kids' table, right? The big decisions happen, and then the instructions are handed down to marketing, who goes out and executes. And what I hear you saying is that marketers need to really kind of interrogate their thinking, interrogate their assumptions, and be really clear, not just creating sort of pretty creative, but having programs with a purpose that affect the bottom line. So if you were talking to a up and coming marketer and you were trying to instruct them on what they can start doing today to hone in their thinking and really develop that kind of serious mindset that lets them graduate from the kids' table, what advice would you have for them?
Understand data and understand, especially if you're B2B, or understand the metrics around pipe gen, funnel conversion, et cetera. Because what I have found, and like I always say, this isn't a new thing, like marketing is a spectrum. And most of us, I can't see my hands in the window, like there's art and there's science. And most of us sit somewhere along the spectrum. A lot of us kind of tend to be more in the art, right? Or like the people that like kind of got into marketing from day one. It's because we like to be creative. And this is kind of where I live. I'm not full over here, but I'm definitely over here. And to have credibility around that C-suite table, you have to have data, and you have to understand data, and you have to speak to the data, right? And so again, it's like, yes, it's not just, oh, we did these number of leads. It's like these leads generated this much pipeline that converted into this much ACV or ARR or whatever your measurement is. And if you're able to speak to that, I think it gives you a lot of credibility. And similarly, like, again, going back to kind of, we said, like, I think there is respect and there is a power in admitting vulnerability. We did spend this money. We did do this campaign and it didn't work how we anticipated, but this is what we learned. And to be able to use that and use data to do that, I think is really, really powerful for marketers.
How do you learn data, right? If I'm like a, up and coming creative director and I want to take that next leap in my career, and data has been foreign to me, for the last 10 years since I left college, right? How at that point in your career do you dive in and really gain an understanding?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I would say, look, there's someone at all companies that care about data and metrics. And the first I'd be like, when you're sitting in your company's all hands, what are the first, when they're talking about how the quarter went, or after their earnings and talking, what are the first three numbers they show you, right? Start there. And then underneath those, there's probably two or three that you need to learn. Find out who owns those metrics. Find out who reports on those metrics, and just ask. What I will say is, again, I've had to teach myself the discipline around understanding data and using data to craft a narrative. Like that's not my happy place. That is a skill that I specifically sought out to learn. If I can learn it, anyone can learn it. And so look at people to help teach you. Similarly, don't try to know everything. If you're a creative director, you don't need to know all the pipe coverage by region, by segment. Like that's too much. You just need to be here. And then as you get comfortable there, you can go down and down and down and down. But if you try to do every metric that a company has, like if you sit down with your head of finance, your head might explode. So start small, start at the key metrics that the company cares about, learn about how marketing impacts some of those, and go from there.
Shifting gears a little here, Shannon, one of the things that struck me when I asked you for the elevator pitch for Asana, the first word out of your mouth, I think was AI. And AI is a topic that is, obviously on everyone's minds right now. Tell me how you think AI is transforming marketing today.
I think the potential for AI to transform marketing is more so or equal to any other function that's out there right now. And I think it's really easy to be nervous, scared. I think having used it as much as I have, and we've really embraced it at Asana in our product and the way we kind of use our products. We use our product for everything, which is great about working there. What I've seen more and more is it is a great unlock for creativity. It is a great unlock for productivity. It is a great unlock for empowerment versus it's taking away what we are known to do. And so that's kind of my message for marketers. If you're nervous or scared or whatever, or don't think you have time, completely flip your mindset because I believe the marketers who embrace this to unlock the potential in themselves are the ones that are going to be the next CMOs of the next 5, 10, 15 years.
Brass tacks, how are you using AI in your day-to-day?
So I use AI constantly. I use AI. I've created a bot that writes like me. So I've talked to it. I've given it writing samples of things that I really like, and now it writes in my tone and voice. Fun fact: I am a huge Britney Spears fan, so I like to include Britney Spears quotes. So now automatically it will add a Britney. Sometimes the Britney Spears quotes are a little. That's why you need like the human sort of guide rails, because sometimes it says things I'm like, I don't think that's appropriate for work bot, but thank you for that. I use it to summarize things. Like for example, I was out on PTO for a week and a half, and I came back, and I'm like, what is happening? AI was able to summarize what I missed. I use it to help with sort of workflows. Like what we're doing at Asana is having AI kind of do some of the more busy work for us, for me, for our customers, so we don't have to do it. I.e., we sign a contract for something, and the web team automatically gets an update. There's no need for be like, hey, web team, we just signed this contract. Can you please update the dates on the website to this, right? Things like that. So it's a lot of things that like make me more productive because they take away some of the busy work that I would be doing.
That's fantastic. Yeah, that's very helpful. I think that's one of the things that, when I'm having conversations, either in work or my personal life, I'm always trying to underscore to people is that like AI is so big and there's so many tools that, you can just kind of offload like a few menial tasks here and there. And before you know it, you're freeing up like hours of time to go back into creativity and just take the administrative burden off of you. And I think that's fantastic and really kind of an immediate lift. I also think you mentioned ideation. I'm all about, going to ChatGPT and saying, give me 10 ideas related to this thing, and just start the brainstorming process and ideate with kind of LLM, I think is fantastic. I'm curious kind of what advice you have for up and coming marketers who want to have your job one day, besides, start playing with AI and learning AI.
Be your authentic self. And if you feel like you can't be authentic where you are, go somewhere else. Be fearless. And I would say treat every interaction like a job interview, because especially when I worked at a very large company for a very long time. But I think this is true for just the industry in general. Like it's a small group of humans, and people get new jobs, they get promoted, they go to new companies, and usually they're building teams and they think to themselves, who could do this job? And they go through their mental Rolodex. I don't know, can I say Rolodex? Do people even know what that is anymore? But like back in the day, kids, there was a thing called Rolodex, but they go through their mental model of names they know. And if they've had a positive interaction with someone who has shown up as positive, collaborative, self-starting, problem solving, those are the phone calls. Almost every job I've gotten, I mean, granted, I was at Salesforce for a long time, was from a referral. It wasn't from a post, like sending a resume in. It was from someone who I had worked for, who recommended me or called me for a job that they thought I'd be interested in.
That's a great point. I think, right now you hear or see posts on Reddit, for example, of people talking about being in a rough job market right now for marketers. And I think that, the idea that just kind of maintaining those human relationships and kind of regular positive interactions with people in your field can pay off, not even in a transactional way. Like there's a human benefit to it. Also, you might get a job. It's helpful for networking, I think is useful to remember. Do you have a favorite marketing campaign you've worked on?
Do I have a favorite marketing campaign I worked on? I mean, there's been so many. I think I will say maybe one of my favorites is when I ran platform marketing for Salesforce. And we did a lot of work on it was called Inside Stories. And we basically went around to all the departments at Salesforce and we got these really cool examples of apps that people were building with Salesforce and how they were making their jobs easier. And we created kind of this like digital magazine around it. And it was really interactive and you could click and you could learn. It was kind of like a choose your own adventure. And it was really cool and it was compelling and it helped take something like the platform, which was kind of hard to explain and hard for people to understand, and made it really personable and real and sort of use case driven. And it actually drove a lot of pipeline too. So it was one of those things that wasn't just cool, it wasn't just pretty. It actually worked really well for our sales team.
I love that. That's fantastic. Shannon, how do you feel about a lightning round?
Oh, I love a lightning round.
Right. Let's jump into it.
Born for a lightning round.
What is the most important trait a CMO needs to have?
Curiosity.
If you could market any brand other than Asana, which would it be?
Sephora.
What's your favorite marketing book?
Ooh, Multiply. It's not a marketing book, it's a leadership book, but Multipliers.
Where outside of marketing do you look for inspiration?
I love social media. I love TikTok and Instagram.
Do you have a favorite TikToker?
No, I follow a lot of, I'm really big on the beauty talk, hence the Sephora reference. So,
what is your favorite marketing campaign of all time?
I think Apple back in the day did brilliant marketing.
Besides Britney Spears, who's your favorite musical artist?
Ooh, I like Taylor Swift too. Pretty basic over here.
Is there anything, speak of a brilliant marketer, by the way, I mean, Taylor Swift really has done fantastic with her brand.
I know.
I know there's a lightning round, but I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't just...
You got to call it out.
She's an incredible marketer. Is there anything we didn't discuss that we should have today, Shannon?
I think we talked about a lot of great stuff. I love marketing. It's all I've ever done. It's all I've ever wanted to do. And I hope out there's people listening to this that feel the same way.
And if people want more of what you have to say, is there anywhere they can catch up with you?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn? Okay, right on. Shannon Duffy with Asana, thanks so much for coming on Talk CMO.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.